My name is Leticia Vandepute. I'm a state senator from San Antonio and chair of the Democratic caucus of the Texas Senate. Joining me today are members of the Texas Senate and the Texas House and the leader in the Texas House, Jessica Farrar from Houston.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Farrar. I'm leader of the House Democratic caucus. You know, they say the first rule to being in a hole is to stop digging. And Governor Perry has traded up his shovel for a backhoe.
5 years ago, let me take these off because these are not quite rosy enough nor thick enough to believe that little performance I just heard or what was seen through those rose-colored glasses. But you know, 5 years ago, the state of Texas was told that the Rick Perry tax plan would solve all the problems of this state. Each Texan would get a $2,000 tax cut and our schools would be paid for. Fast forward to 2011, and Texas has a $10 billion budget structural deficit from the Perry tax plan, and the budget proposed by those in control cuts over $9.8 billion from our public schools. Almost a dollar for dollar swap, stealing money from our schools to pay for Perry's tax cut. Rick Perry's economic miracle is a deception, and now it's time for him to come clean. President Obama saved Rick Perry last session with $16.9 billion in stimulus funds. If it were not for those monies, the debt would have already been very transparent here in Texas. Perry and those in control continue to write hot checks in Texas. They continue to balance this budget on the backs of children, on the backs of the elderly. They continue to believe that they can take money and just move the money and hand it out to the private corporations that make the greatest level of contribution during an election season, and instead cut programs so vital to the health and safety of our children. All of you know, very near and dear to my heart, is the Department of Family and Protective Services. And that they have been under reform after reform after reform, as the governor was saying during his rosy-colored glass speech, making changes in order to balance this budget. But in those reforms that are being presented in the budgets today, it's about cutting back on those caseworkers who will be able to go out and ensure that our children are not beat, that our children are not left to die, that our children are not molested, that our children are in safe environments. And every time I see one of those children, one child, I see the face of my daughter that I adopted from the Department of Family and Protective Services. And those glasses no longer are in focus to me. We need to stop the deception, we need to stop the deceit, and we need to stop the debt and tell the truth.
A few weeks ago, I, like you and my legislative colleagues, confirmed what millions of hardworking Texans already knew, that our great state did not escape the deepest recession since the Great Depression. Governor Perry has been waking up in a very different reality than most citizens of Texas. Their reality is becoming starker by the day. In the reality of Texas families, schools are closing, teachers are losing their jobs, and state support for public education, already among the lowest in the entire nation, is facing dramatic cuts. In the reality of Texas elderly, nursing homes face closure, making some of our state's most vulnerable fear the worst. In the reality of veterans returning to Texas from Iraq and Afghanistan, 1 in 5 cannot find jobs. While everyday Texans face those realities, those in control who spent months spinning tall tales on campaign trails, assuring us that all was well in Texas, remain out of touch with the uncertainties, financial struggles, and hardships facing so many Texas families.
I want to add a little bit to what my colleagues have mentioned about the way that the governor has established the taxing system for our state and our politics. The fact is that 2011 is Rick Perry's Madoff moment. You see, the governor years ago established a system that really is a Ponzi scheme. And the Ponzi scheme is up. And we have a message for the governor, and that is, Governor, your Ponzi scheme is up, and the people of Texas are ready to hold you accountable. We have said that the governor and those in charge have written an insufficient check to the school children of Texas, to the retired people who go into our nursing homes, to the people who rely on health and human services. They set up a Ponzi scheme, and now, when the folks of Texas need our state, there's not enough money to cover the promises that they made. You know, we've known for a long time that the promises of Rick Perry expire on Election Day. We've known that as Democrats, and now the people of the state of Texas are getting to know that very well in 2011. I would add one more thing. The governor asked us not to forget the fact that Texas created more jobs than any other state in the nation. Well, there's something that we would like the governor not to forget. The fact that when you create more jobs and you have more people coming into your state, those people have kids who have to go to our public schools. They're older senior citizens. Sometimes they bring their parents and grandparents. Those folks have to go into retirement and nursing homes. That these things that are essential services for our state can't be ignored, and they can't be written away or reduced to some outlook that is a combination of his fairy tale book and his hope chest. The fact is, the governor has to get in with reality and has got to take this budget seriously. The budget is the emergency item of this session.
I want to mention a couple of points. One, the election is over, unless somebody's running for something else. At least in terms of governor of Texas, that election is over with. And all of us want things to work in Texas. Whether you're to the left or the right, the middle, if you're Democrat or Republican, at the end of the day, all of us want this state. In a lot of ways, most of our battles over this last decade have been trying to put us back where we were in terms of funding from that 2001 session. Something happened along the way. In part, that $10 billion structural deficit. I want you to remember three Ds, and that's what I heard all of my colleagues say in one way or another. A lot of diversions. We've ended up focusing on issues that don't really matter to Texas families, but maybe they help someone score a few political points. We've looked at distractions, pulling us away from the real issues. That's the second D. And we've looked at debt. Diversions, distractions, and debt. And I think that is the real problem that we face in this session, and we're going to face for a very long time until we address the #1 emergency in Texas, a structural deficit. Thank you.